Welcome to Truly Scary Tinder Online Dating Stories. Smash like and subscribe to tread the thin line between reality and the surreal. Let's begin our eerie expedition. In the quest for love, we often leave digital footprints in places darker than we can imagine, sometimes leading directly into the heart of a chilling obsession. I remember the night vividly, the way the fog hugged the ground as if the earth itself was trying to hold on to something fleeting. My name is Bruce. I'm just a regular guy, a software developer by day, a hopeful romantic by night, or at least I was. You see, that night, the night I decided to drive to Sarah's house, was the beginning of an end. An end to my innocence in believing what you see or feel through a screen is what gets mirrored in reality. It all started innocently enough. Tinder, my newly downloaded gladiator arena, where I fought with the courage of swipes and the acuity of carefully drafted messages. The battlefield left me weary until Sarah appeared. Her profile was a beacon in a stormy sea. Beautiful, witty, and just the right amount of mystery. We matched, and the connection was instantaneous. Action beat 1. Our first conversation lasted hours. It was as if we were old friends, picking up right where we left off, except we never had a left off. Sarah's laughter through the phone felt closer than some of the handshakes I've had. We delved into dreams, fears, and the kind of conversational depths that made the surface seem uninviting. But even in this warm sea of newfound connection, there were undercurrents. Sarah often spoke of Mark, her ex, in a way that seemed to walk the tightrope between disdain and obsession. He just couldn't let go, she would say, a hint of something darker beneath her laughter. My mind, ever analytical, filed these moments away, but my heart was too far gone to heed any warnings. Action beat 2. Invitations over text have a way of building anticipation that borders on the unbearable. When Sarah invited me over for dinner, it was as if the last piece of a puzzle had fallen into place. I remember standing outside her door, a bottle of wine in one hand, a bouquet of flowers in the other, thinking, this is it. This is where the loneliness ends. Little did I know, it was actually where it would intensify. The door swung open, and there she stood, just as beautiful as her photos promised. Yet there was an aura about her that photos could never capture. Dinner was laid out meticulously, a picture-perfect scene from a magazine. We talked, we laughed, and for a moment, the world outside her welcoming home ceased to exist. But when she excused herself, supposedly to get dessert from the kitchen, and the minutes stretched too long, an uneasy feeling began to coil in my stomach. The house, warm and inviting just moments before, started to feel a bit too silent, a bit too large. The night was young, and the depths I would plunge into were darker than I could have ever imagined. Action beat 3. My unease slowly turned into concern, then curiosity, compelling me to search for Sarah. The warmth of the house shifted into a labyrinth of shadows. Each step seemed echoed by whispers from the walls themselves, murmurs of countless dinners, countless conversations, none of them mine. That's when I found it, a door, slightly ajar, hidden by the deceptive normalcy of a hallway linen closet. Pushing it open revealed a room that should not have existed. It was an art studio, but unlike any I had seen. The air hung heavy with a stillness that made my skin crawl. There, amongst the scattered art supplies and canvases, were the dioramas. They were scenes of Sarah's life, exquisitely crafted with an unsettling attention to detail. My heart pounded as I recognized one of the scenes. It was our dinner, replicated down to the pattern on the tablecloth, only I was depicted lying on the floor, dismembered. The realization hit me with the force of a freight train. I was in the house of someone deeply disturbed. Action beat 4. Before I could process the horror before me, the sound of footsteps broke the eerie silence. I turned to see Mark, Sarah's ex, stepping into the dim light of the room. His calm demeanor was at odds with the chaos of my beating heart. Beautiful, isn't it? Sarah has a unique way of keeping memories alive, he said, his voice unnervingly composed as he gestured towards the dioramas. The implication of his words sent a wave of panic through me. My gaze shifted frantically between Mark and the exit, calculating my chances. You see, once you're part of her life, she keeps you forever, Mark continued, his eyes locking onto mine with a predatory intensity. It was clear now that Sarah's obsessions extended beyond mere ex-partner grievances. They were a sinister foreshadowing of a fate I was about to share unless I acted quickly. With every instinct screaming, I took my chance, pushing past Mark and sprinting for the door, my breath ragged as I plunged into the night, the house, Sarah's trap, receding into the darkness behind me. The cold night air bit at my skin as I ran, the fear propelling me forward, away from the horror of Sarah's house and the twisted sanctuary of her memories. The street lamps flickered overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to chase after me, as if Sarah's obsession itself reached beyond the confines of her home. My mind raced, trying to piece together the night's events, but every thought was overshadowed by the haunting image of the diorama, my own figure, lifeless and segmented on the floor. Finally, I stopped. My breaths coming in ragged gasps, the adrenaline waning but the fear remaining, a constant companion in the night's stillness. I pulled out my phone, its screen a glaring beacon in the darkness. There were no missed calls, no messages from Sarah, just an eerie silence that mirrored the void I felt inside. I contemplated calling the police, but what would I say? That my date created dioramas of her relationships? That her ex revealed the true depth of her obsession? I was trapped in a nightmare, yet the evidence lay behind a door I never wanted to open again. Ending. The days that followed were a blur. I deleted Tinder, the app now a symbol of the dangers lurking behind the facade of digital intimacy. My conversations with friends and family were hollow, the shadow of that night enveloping every interaction. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end, with every footstep behind me, every unexpected message notification. Sarah and Mark had vanished, leaving behind a vacuum filled with unanswered questions and unshakable paranoia. I was free, but at what cost? The search for connection had led me into the heart of darkness, and though I escaped with my life, part of me remained in that room, forever immortalized in Sarah's twisted collection. The quest for love had led me to a chilling realization. In the digital world, some footprints are impossible to erase, leading us down paths we can never truly escape. Imagine finding your soulmate, only to discover they had been dead for a year. The person you fell for, shared secrets with, and planned a future together never existed, at least not in the way you thought. This is a tale of love, deception, and the haunting shadows lurking within the digital age. John was no stranger to the modern rituals of seeking companionship. Swipe left, swipe right, an unending digital dance yielding more missteps than harmony. Yet, amidst the digital noise, one conversation sparked into an unexpected symphony. Her name was Emily, a beacon of understanding and warmth in the vast, unforgiving sea of online dating. Their nightly conversations soon became the highlight of John's day. As a software engineer, his life was a series of calculated decisions and logical pathways, but Emily brought out something different in him, a hopeful romantic, eagerly awaiting each ding of his messaging app. One such night, under the soft glow of his desk lamp, John found himself sharing more with Emily than he ever had with anyone. They talked about everything from trivial likes and dislikes to the deepest recesses of their fears and dreams. Emily's voice, a soft melody through the phone speaker, was both comforting and exhilarating. For John, it felt like a connection he had been yearning for all his life. But as John would soon discover, some connections are too good to be true. Weeks turned into a month, and the time had come to meet in person. Plans were set, a quaint little coffee shop downtown, Saturday at 3 p.m. However, as the day approached, Emily's messages grew scarce, until finally there was silence. Puzzled and concerned, John attempted to reach out, only to find her Tinder profile gone and her phone number disconnected. Confusion spiraled into a sinking feeling. Had he done something wrong? Was she in trouble? Refusing to let worry turn into despair, John took matters into his own hands. He began retracing their conversations, searching for any clue that might lead him to Emily. It was during a late, sleepless night, sifting through emails and messages, that John stumbled upon an unsettling discrepancy. A photo Emily had sent, claiming it was from a recent trip, was eerily similar to one he found on a social media memorial page. Driven by a need for answers, John visited the local library's public records section the next day. What he found chilled him to the bone: a death certificate and an obituary for Emily, dated over a year ago. The realization that the woman he loves doesn't exist anymore set a cold fire in John's heart. It wasn't just confusion anymore. It was terror mixed with an unyielding determination to uncover the truth behind the digital guise of love that had ensnared him. The confrontation with the imposter was set in a secluded corner of a dimly lit coffee shop, a place chosen for its privacy and quiet atmosphere. John arrived early, his heart pounding in his chest, a mix of anger, betrayal, and an unsettling curiosity simmering beneath the surface. As he waited, his mind raced with questions, each one darker and more unsettling than the last. When she arrived, John almost didn't recognize her. The woman who approached him bore a faint resemblance to the pictures of Emily he had grown so fond of, yet her eyes told a different story, a story of sorrow, desperation, and a haunting loneliness. She wore the same unsettling smile that had greeted him on his screen for months, yet it no longer reached her eyes. The subsequent conversation was a tense, emotionally charged exchange where layers of deception were peeled away to reveal a troubled past. The woman, whose real name was Clara, spoke of childhood abandonment, years of foster care, and a spiral into a life of manipulation and deceit. Assuming Emily's identity was her escape, a way to feel loved and connected in a world that had shown her little kindness. John listened, a tumult of emotions battling within him. Anger at being deceived, pity for the woman's plight, and an overwhelming sense of loss for the connection he thought he had. The confrontation left him with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear: the person he had fallen for was a complex illusion, crafted from the depths of someone else's despair. In the days that followed, John found an unlikely ally in Sarah, a journalist friend with a keen interest in digital privacy and cybercrime. Together, they began to unravel the web of identities that Clara had woven across the internet. Each discovery revealed more victims like John, each one drawn in by the allure of an understanding soul, only to be left adrift in a sea of lies and deception. Sarah's cluttered home office became their command center, walls covered in notes and string connecting each piece of evidence. John's skills as a software engineer allowed them to trace IP addresses and digital footprints, piecing together Clara's movements and methods. Their investigation culminated in the unearthing of a digital diary hidden in the deep recesses of the web, a diary that Clara had kept. It was a window into her turmoil, her justification for her actions, and her plan to assume a new identity and start anew. Armed with this knowledge, John and Sarah approached law enforcement, providing them with the evidence needed to apprehend Clara. As they watched her being taken away, John felt a complex mixture of relief and sorrow. Clara's arrest marked the end of his search for answers, but also the beginning of a long journey toward healing and trust. John and Sarah's unlikely partnership had not only uncovered the truth behind Clara's deception, but also set free the other victims ensnared by her web of lies. Together, they had turned their experience into a beacon of awareness, highlighting the shadowed corners of digital intimacy, forever changed by the haunting smile of the woman on the screen. In the aftermath of Clara's arrest, John found himself standing before a crowded conference room, the bright lights of the stage casting long shadows across the sea of faces before him. It was a conference dedicated to cybercrime and online safety, and John had been invited to share his story, a tale of deception, betrayal, and the resilience of the human spirit. As he spoke, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions within, John recounted the journey that had brought him here. From the initial connection with Emily, through the dark descent into the reality of her identity theft, and finally to the confrontation with Clara. He shared the pain of betrayal, the shock of discovery, and the importance of staying vigilant in a world where online personas could so easily mask darker intentions. But it wasn't just a story of caution that John brought to the conference. It was a message of hope. He talked about the strength found in unlikely alliances, pointing to Sarah in the audience, and the power of resilience in the face of deceit. He emphasized the importance of listening to one's instincts and the critical need for conversations about online safety and privacy. The audience listened, rapt as John concluded his speech with a call to action, a plea for everyone to tread carefully in digital realms, to guard their hearts, but also to remember the humanity behind every screen, deserving of compassion and understanding. As the conference came to an end, John felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. Sharing his experience had not only helped others, but had also marked the final chapter of his own healing process. He had transformed from a victim of a cruel digital hoax into an advocate for awareness and change, guiding others away from potential heartbreak. In the months that followed, John remained in close contact with Sarah, their friendship having been forged in the fire of their shared ordeal. Together, they continued to speak out about online safety, using their story to encourage others to approach online interactions with caution, but also with open hearts, ready to find connection in a world increasingly defined by digital encounters. The haunting memory of the smiling woman on the screen would always linger in the back of John's mind, a reminder of the path he had walked and the lessons learned. But it also served as a beacon, guiding him and countless others toward a future where love and trust could flourish, unfettered by the shadows of deceit.
In the digital webs we weave, seeking connection amidst the endless expanse of the internet, what are the chances we ensnare something darker, something that watches from beyond the glow of our screens? This question haunted me, a silent specter lingering long after the messages faded and the profile vanished. My plunge into the world of online dating, initially a pursuit of light-hearted flirtation, morphed into a chilling odyssey into the uncanny valley of digital identities, where the ghost of a missing person reached out for help from beyond their disappearance. My story begins innocuously enough, swiping through Tinder with a blend of skepticism and curiosity. That's when I matched with Casey. Their profile was a patchwork of intriguing photos and a bio that promised depth beyond the usual online personas. From the start, our connection was electric, pulsing through the circuitry of my phone with every notification. Yet, despite Casey's apparent eagerness, they remained elusive, dodging any attempt to transition our conversation into the realms of video or real-life encounters with myriad excuses. The seeds of suspicion planted by Casey's reticence grew unchecked as days passed, watered by my own insatiable curiosity and a sense of something lurking beneath the surface. Unable, or perhaps unwilling to let the matter rest, I found myself descending into an investigative frenzy one quiet, unassuming evening. My living room, usually a sanctuary of comfort, transformed into a command center lit by the soft glow of my laptop screen, surrounded by a sea of hastily scrawled notes and an ever-growing web of digital breadcrumbs. Poring over our chat history, I dissected each message, each photo, searching for clues that might reveal the truth behind Casey's enigmatic facade. Cross-referencing social media profiles, digging through online archives, and employing a touch of amateur sleuthing, I stumbled upon a revelation that chilled me to my core. The person smiling back from Casey's photos wasn't some distant internet stranger, but a missing person, vanished without a trace several months prior. The weight of my discovery pressed down on me, a tangible darkness that seemed to leach the air from the room. Casey, or whoever hid behind the stolen identity of a soul lost to the void, had woven a web of deceit that I had blithely stumbled into. The realization that I might be engaging with a phantom, a digital echo of someone's desperate cry for help, or worse, the machinations of their captor, filled me with a cold dread that no logical explanation could dispel. Compelled by a mix of fear, morbid fascination, and an unshakable sense of duty to the person who had unknowingly become the face of my Tinder match, I reached out to Casey once more. This time, my message was a mix of concern and accusation, a demand for the truth that I hoped would pierce through the veil of anonymity that digital interactions afford. To my astonishment, Casey agreed to a video call. Heart hammering against my ribs, I accepted the call, my finger hovering hesitantly over the accept button as if it were a trigger. The screen flickered to life, revealing Casey's face, mirroring the photos but suffused with a palpable fear that no image could convey. Their blue eyes darted around the dimly lit room, the sparse furnishings providing no clue as to their location. Before I could muster a word, a shadow shifted in the murky background of the video feed, and Casey's eyes widened in terror. The call ended abruptly, the screen going dark, leaving me alone with the echoing silence and a haunting certainty that the ghostly web of digital dating had ensnared me in a nightmare far beyond what I could have imagined. The decision to involve the authorities was made with a shaky hand dialing the number, the digits blurring through a veil of fear and determination. The police station, stark and fluorescently lit, felt like a beacon of hope against the shadowy uncertainty that enveloped me. Detective Jordan, with his gruff demeanor and ink-traced arms, listened to my tale with a skepticism that was both expected and disheartening. "Our hands are tied without tangible evidence, Miss Thompson," he explained, his voice a blend of sympathy and professional detachment. "Digital footprints vanish. Calls can't always be traced back, especially if they're using VoIP or similar methods." His words, meant to offer some solace, only deepened the chasm of isolation I felt. The system, with all its might and machinery, seemed ill-equipped to combat the phantoms dwelling within the circuits and signals of our interconnected world. Returning to my apartment was akin to entering a crime scene where the remnants of my previous life mocked the present's pervasive unease. Shadows clung too tightly to the corners, and every notification on my phone was a gunshot in the quietude. The mirror reflected a stranger, one who knew too deeply the horrors that lurked behind friendly profile pictures and flirtatious messages. I found no solace in sleep, the dreamscape a theater for the replay of Casey's terror-stricken eyes and the ominous emergence of that dark figure. The following days melded into a continuous loop of futile attempts to contact Casey again, of scouring the internet for any clue that might lead to their real identity or location, and of contemplating the innumerable dangers posed by our digital lives. The stark realization that I was alone in this, the authorities adrift in the tangible while I was ensnared in the intangible, cemented a resolve within me. If the shadowy tendrils of the internet had reached out from the abyss to clutch at my reality, then I would fight back with the same weapon. I began to document everything: our conversations, my findings, the video call. A blog post turned into a series, a cautionary tale weaving together the terror of my experience with the inherent dangers of online anonymity and digital dating. The act of writing, of exposing this horror to the light of public scrutiny, became my solace. It was a solitary battle, waging a war of words against the unseen terror that had gripped my life. Yet, in this digital exorcism, I found a semblance of control, a way to claw back from the edge of the abyss that Casey had inadvertently drawn me towards. And so, surrounded by the familiar walls of my apartment, transformed now into a fortress of solitude and survival, I persevered. The screen that once served as a portal to potential companionship now glowed with the testament of my ordeal, a beacon for others navigating the murky waters of online connection. In the sharing of my story, I found not absolution, but purpose, a beacon in the darkness for those who might one day find themselves ensnared in a similar digital web. The community center's hall, usually echoing with the laughter and chatter of everyday activities, had taken on a somber tone that evening. Chairs arranged in a cautious circle, each one occupied by individuals whose curiosity or personal experiences had drawn them to my session. The hidden dangers of online dating. The title of my talk seemed both a stark warning and a solemn invitation to share in the narrative of my recent life. As I began, my voice trembled, betraying the nerves that crackled beneath my composed exterior. The room, however, offered a silent encouragement, a collective breath held as I recounted the tale that had become my reality. The story of Casey unfolded, each word a weight lifted, yet each pause a reminder of the fear that had rooted itself deep within me. Detective Jordan, a supportive silhouette against the back wall, offered a silent testament to the bridge I had managed to build between the tangible and intangible. His presence, once a symbol of skepticism, had morphed into an emblem of the slowly turning tides of understanding and acknowledgement of the unseen horrors facilitated by our digital era. The conclusion of my tale was met with a palpable silence, a shared moment of absorption and reflection. Questions and personal anecdotes began to emerge from the attendees, a collective unburdening that transformed the session into something far greater than a simple warning about online dating. It became a beacon for communal awareness, a rally against the shadows that lurk behind screens. In the weeks that followed, the blog that began as a solitary endeavor grew into a platform for shared stories, tips for digital safety, and support for those who had faced or were facing the specters of online connection gone awry. What had started as an isolating journey had blossomed into a collective movement, illuminating the dark alleys of the digital world with the light of awareness and solidarity. My resolve to bring Casey's situation to light, to seek justice or at least closure, never waned. The clues remained scant, the leads cold, but the fire within me, fueled by the ordeal and the community's response, burned ever brighter. Casey's face, forever imprinted in my memory, served not as a token of fear, but as a reminder of the purpose born from the depths of digital despair. The shadows of the screen, once menacing and omnipresent, had receded, pushed back by the collective light of awareness and action. In the narratives we shared, in the connections we forged in the face of anonymous threats, we found not just caution, but power. The power to confront, to challenge, and to change the narrative of online dating from one of potential horror to one of mindful interaction and mutual protection. As I stood once more in the community center, preparing for another session, I realized that while the story of Casey might have ushered me into this fight, it was the stories of countless others, including my own, that would carry it forward. In this realization lay not an ending, but a beginning. A first step into a world where the shadows of the screen are met with the unyielding light of informed resilience.
Have you ever felt the unsettling gaze of someone watching you from the shadows? Their intentions unknown, their presence unfelt, but deeply pervading every corner of your personal space. Imagine if that gaze came from someone you invited into your life, not through a door, but through the digital gateway of a Tinder swipe. In a world where digital connection often feels as tangible as the air we breathe, I found myself suffocating under the weight of superficial interactions. Tinder dates came and went like the passing of seasons, brief, predictable, and ultimately forgettable. That is until Eve. Her profile was an enigma wrapped in a riddle, no pictures, just a promise of deep, meaningful conversation and a shared love for the underrated art of horror films. I was intrigued, drawn to the mystery of her presence, or rather, the lack thereof. Our conversations unfolded like the plot of a classic thriller, each message bringing with it a sense of anticipation, a craving for the next piece of the puzzle. Her voice, heard only through the phone, had a hauntingly familiar quality, yet I couldn't place it. It was comforting and eerie in equal measure. The promise of finally meeting her, of putting a face to the voice that had become my nightly solace, was intoxicating. Eve suggested we spend our first meeting not out in the crowded clamor of the city, but in the intimate setting of my own home, watching a horror movie, a testament to our shared passion. The night before her promised visit, a subtle shift began to make itself known. Action beat 1, the disappearing objects. It started small, a book misplaced, a mug not where I had left it. I rationalized these occurrences, attributing them to my own absent-mindedness. But as the day of Eve's visit dawned, the frequency of these oddities increased. My keys, always left on the kitchen counter, were found in the living room. My phone charger, usually plugged beside my bed, vanished, only to be discovered in the bathroom. These disturbances, minor and easily dismissible on their own, coalesced into a symphony of unease, a prelude to the realization that I was not alone. Action beat 2, the whispering shadows. The evening arrived, draped in an anticipation that bordered on dread. I followed Eve's instructions, starting the movie we had agreed upon, the room lit only by the flickering images on the screen. Her absence was palpable, a void filled by the strange sensation of being watched. Then, as the protagonist on screen tiptoed through a haunted house, whispers filled my living room, commenting on the scene, detailing reactions with unnerving accuracy. The temperature dropped, a chill wrapping around me like an unwanted embrace. I paused the movie, the silence that followed both a relief and a terror. The whispers were unmistakably Eve's, her presence undeniably felt, yet not seen. How she achieved this, I couldn't fathom. But as I sat there in the dim light of my TV, the digital world's promises of connection and intimacy warped into something entirely more sinister, a prelude to the nightmare that awaited me. Action Beat 3. The revealing phone call. In the days following the chilling movie night, my reality began to unravel. The whispers lingered, an undercurrent to my daily life, subtle yet unmistakable. I wrestled with the decision to confront Eve, to demand answers for the phenomena that had invaded my sanctuary. The opportunity presented itself unexpectedly late one evening when my phone rang, the caller ID flashing Eve's name. The air hung heavy with anticipation as I answered. Her voice, usually a comforting melody, now carried an edge of something dark, something otherworldly. "I've been with you longer than you can imagine," she confessed in a tone that twisted my stomach into knots. Not as a ghost, but something else. Something more. The words cascaded through the phone, distorting with static that seemed to carry the weight of her true nature. Eve spoke of her omnipresence, a reality I had unknowingly accepted with every swipe, like, and message, a digital Pandora's box I had opened without understanding the consequences. Action Beat 4. Alex's intervention. Shaken to my core, I recounted the events to Alex, my best friend and grounding force in a world that seemed increasingly unhinged. His reaction was a mixture of disbelief and concern, his normally unwavering rationality challenged by the distress in my voice. "Don't you see? It's all digital manipulation, some sort of twisted game," Alex argued, his voice a lifeline in the storm. But the fear that had taken root within me was not easily assuaged by logic. The night evolved into a strategy session, alcohol fueling our courage and desperation. Alex, ever the pragmatist, suggested surveillance, proof to confront the inexplicable. It was a plan born of necessity, a tangible step against the unseen forces at play. We set up cameras, a digital eye to watch over me, a hope that proof would bring clarity or, at the very least, sanity. Alex's intervention, while steeped in skepticism, provided the momentum needed to face the unknown. It anchored me to reality, to the belief that there was a way out, a means to dismantle the haunting presence that Eve had become. The resolve to find answers, to reclaim my life from the shadows that whispered Eve's name, solidified with Alex's support. The path forward was fraught with uncertainty, but no longer was it one I walked alone. Action Beat 5. The final escape. The surveillance footage revealed nothing. No shadows where there shouldn't be, no items moving of their own volition. Yet the whispers persisted, a constant reminder of Eve's presence. A presence felt but unseen, documented yet unprovable. It was the final straw, a realization that some forces, particularly those born of digital origins, transcended physical evidence. With my sense of safety in tatters, I made the decision to leave. Packing only the essentials, I glanced back at the apartment that had once been my sanctuary, now a prison of paranoia and fear. The whispers seemed to follow me as I locked the door for the last time, a lament for the connection that had turned into a curse. As I drove away, my phone vibrated incessantly, Eve's messages cascading one after the other, each more pleading than the last. "Don't leave. You can never truly leave," they read. With each mile, the weight of her words felt lighter, her grip loosening. I realized then that the true escape wasn't just physical. It was a disconnection from the digital ties that bound me to her. The days turned into weeks, and the whispers faded into a distant memory, a chilling reminder of the cost of intimacy in the digital age. I found solace in anonymity, a new start unburdened by the past and untraceable by Eve, or whatever she truly was. But peace is a fragile thing. Late at night, when the world is quiet and the barrier between the digital and the tangible thins, I find myself listening for the whispers, a part of me wondering if they'll ever return, if Eve will find a way back into my life. The experience left me with more than just a tale of terror. It bestowed a wary respect for the unseen connections we forge, a cautionary tale of the digital footprint we leave behind. Eve's final message haunts me still, a reminder that some connections, once made, linger in the shadows of our lives, waiting for a chance to reemerge. "Goodbye for now," it read. And in the silence that followed, I couldn't help but wonder if it was a promise or a threat. Ever looked into a mirror and realized the person staring back wasn't you? Not in the literal sense, of course. But there, in the faint reflection, you catch glimpses of someone transformed by choices, by love sought and lost in the digital age. I found myself at this uncanny precipice one crisp autumn evening, a moment forever etched in the mirrors of my memory. My name is Alex, and my search for connection had led me to the depths of Tinder, a realm where swipes of hope often turned into ghosts of what might have been. Yet, amidst the digital sea of faces, there was one that seemed to radiate something genuine, something different. Jordan. The match that would unwittingly guide me through a journey both wondrous and harrowing. Our conversations were a tapestry of shared passions and mirrored vulnerabilities. With each message, my intrigue for Jordan deepened, their words weaving seamlessly into the fabric of my daydreams. It wasn't long before Jordan proposed a first date, but with a twist that piqued my curiosity beyond bounds, a scavenger hunt. The first clue arrived one early evening, a cryptic message leading me to an urban park painted in the golden hues of sunset. Clutching my phone, I traced the paths I'd walked countless times, but now with a sense of adventure pulsing through my veins. Beneath the watchful gaze of the weeping willow, your journey begins, the message read. As I approached the ancient tree, its branches swaying softly in the breeze, a mixture of excitement and apprehension danced in my stomach. Reaching its base, I found a neatly folded note that bore my name. Unfolding it, I read the words that would propel me further into this unfolding mystery. To the place where caffeine and ambition blend, there you'll find your next guiding friend. The cafe mentioned was no stranger to me, a sanctuary of creativity, where I'd spent countless hours hunched over my laptop, weaving stories from the threads of imagination and reality. With each step towards the cafe, a niggling unease began to take root. How did Jordan know of this place? A question that hung heavily in the crisp evening air. Stepping into the warmth of the cafe, the familiar smell of coffee embraced me like an old friend. Sitting at my usual table, I spotted another note, its presence both inviting and unsettling. This game, once thrilling, now carried an undercurrent of something far more mysterious, perhaps even sinister. Unfolding the note, my heart raced as I read the next clue, oblivious to the path I'd unwittingly begun to tread, one that would lead me to question not just the heart behind the screen, but the very essence of my pursuit for connection in this digital age. The next clue led me down memory lanes, both literal and figurative, to the outskirts of the city where my youth had unfurled like the wildflowers in spring. Where childhood dreams soared above and below, find the oak that sheltered you from storm and snow. The words struck a chord, reverberating through the chambers of memory until they settled upon one vivid image, the old oak in my childhood neighborhood. It was a guardian of sorts, under whose sprawling branches I had found refuge and imagined worlds far beyond. As I wandered through the streets that had once cradled my every adventure, the unsettling realization that Jordan knew of this place, my sanctuary, sent shivers down my spine. How? The question echoed in my mind with each step, growing louder as I neared the oak. The sight of it, majestic as ever, was now marred by the foreboding sense of intrusion. Tucked into its ancient roots was another note, and with trembling hands, I pulled it free. The playful spark of the scavenger hunt had dimmed, replaced by a gnawing apprehension of what this game had revealed about my unseen companion. The clue led me back to the heart of my present life, my own apartment. The final piece of the puzzle waits where your day ends and begins. Under the shelter of your own roof, find the reflection of your soul's twin. A chill ran through me. The playful mystery of Jordan's scavenger hunt had morphed into something altogether more invasive. The reality of someone knowing not just the cafes I frequented or the parks I strolled, but the very threshold of my private sanctuary sent panic whispering through my veins. Yet, propelled by a need for resolution and an underlying current of fear, I made my way home. My apartment greeted me with its familiar, comforting embrace, but tonight it was laced with an undertone of dread. My eyes immediately found the object that didn't belong, a beautifully crafted mirror, leaning against the wall opposite my front door. Its frame was intricate, an artwork in itself, but it was the etching on the glass that caused my heart to freeze. Find your true soulmate. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Jordan hadn't just tracked my movements or guessed at my haunts. They had invaded the deepest realms of my privacy, turning my quest for connection into a voyeuristic nightmare. The mirror, meant to reflect the truth of my soul, now only mirrored my deepest fears, of being seen yet not known, of being found yet utterly lost. My reflection stared back at me, a stranger in my own home, trapped in the gaze of unseen eyes. In the days that followed, the mirror became a haunting presence in my apartment, a constant reminder of the line that had been crossed. Each reflection seemed to echo back questions of trust, intimacy, and the shadows that lurked in the corners of digital connections. It was during one of these reflective moments that Charlie came knocking, concern etched deeply in his features as he entered my unsettled world. Sitting across from me, his voice cut through the eerie silence that had enveloped my life since the scavenger hunt ended. "Alex, this isn't just about a creepy date or an invasion of privacy," he said, the weight of his words grounding me back to reality. "It's about you understanding that not every connection is pure, not every match is a soulmate, and sometimes the most important relationship is the one you have with yourself." As Charlie spoke, his words unraveling the tightly wound fear and confusion, a transformative understanding took root. The journey Jordan had sent me on, while fraught with the shadows of deception and manipulation, had inadvertently forced me to confront my own reflections, both literal and metaphorical. In the weeks that followed, the mirror became less a symbol of my violation and more a testament to my resilience. I began to reclaim my space, my privacy, and my sense of self. The mirror, once a source of fear, now reflected back a stronger, wiser version of me. The experience had peeled back the layers of my digital naivety, unveiling the crucial lesson that in the search for connection, it was essential to guard not just my heart, but my privacy too. So I forge ahead, cautious yet hopeful, solitary, yet no longer lonely. For in the mirror's reflection, I have found not the soulmate I sought in others, but the true companion that had been with me all along, myself. The journey through digital love had led me to an unexpected destination, one where the search for connection begins not with a swipe, but with a gaze into the mirror. And as for Tinder, let's just say I'm swiping left on digital dating for a while. The real connections I've learned require something no app can offer: true reflection and self-discovery. In the digital age where hearts are swiped right in hopes of finding love, lurks an untold danger, more sinister than the loneliness it seeks to cure. It was under the guile of affection and shared secrets that I, Alex, had my brush with darkness, a darkness that preyed on the longing and trust of online daters like me. My adventure began innocuously enough. Charmed by a certain profile on Tinder, I found myself lost in lengthy conversations with Sophie. She was enigmatic, her stories filled with the shadows of past stalkers, a narrative that drew me in, invoking both my curiosity and my protective instincts. As our rapport deepened, a meeting seemed inevitable. So when Sophie suggested her secluded house on the outskirts for our first in-person encounter, alarm bells were silenced by the anticipation of finally meeting the woman who had occupied my every thought. The night was quieter than usual as I made my way to the address Sophie provided. My heart raced with excitement, oblivious to the truth that awaited me. Upon entering the house, dimly lit and cloaked in silence, a creeping sense of unease washed over me. The warmth of our online interactions was nowhere to be found in the cold, almost surgical cleanliness of the interior. It was this unsettling atmosphere that led me to a door ajar, beyond which lay the first undeniable hint of the horror to come. Action Beat 1, Discovering the Surveillance Room. A soft glow emanated from what appeared to be an ordinary room. Pushing the door open, the light revealed a chilling sight, a surveillance haven with multiple monitors displaying live feeds. It was a voyeur's paradise, each screen a window into someone else's life. But these were not random strangers. They were women who, like me, sought connection in the digital expanse. My heart sank as the realization hit me. Sophie's tales of stalkers were more than mere stories. They were her confessions, twisted reflections of her own dark pursuits. Action Beat 2, The Capture. As I stood frozen, absorbing the horrifying truth, a voice shattered the silence. "I see you found my collection," Sophie's voice, once melodic and warm, now dripped with a sinister calm that sent shivers down my spine. I turned to find her blocking the door, her blue eyes no longer pools of warmth, but rather icy gateways to her twisted soul. The room, once my potential escape, became my prison. Sophie's approach was methodical, as if she relished the moment of revelation, enjoying the terror that now flickered across my face. My attempts to reason, to appeal to the person I thought I knew, fell on deaf ears. As her cold hands gripped my arms, securing them behind my back, the reality of my peril dawned. This was no date. It was a meticulously laid trap, and I had walked right into it, ensnared by the promise of connection in the void of digital intimacy. Action Beat 3, the escape attempt. In the dim confines of the room that was now my cell, I leaned into every ounce of fear and desperation that coursed through me. Bound and seemingly at the mercy of Sophie's twisted will, I scanned the room for any glimmer of hope, any tool that might aid in my escape. In a stroke of luck, or perhaps fate lending its hand, my eyes fell upon a shard of glass, carelessly discarded in the corner of the room. With each passing second, as Sophie reveled in her control outside, I worked tirelessly, silently, to free myself from the ties that bound me. The shard cut into the ropes and into my flesh, but the pain was a small price for the freedom it promised. Adrenaline surged as the final strand gave way, and I was free. My mind raced with plans of escape, knowing too well that timing was crucial. As the door creaked open, signaling Sophie's return, I took my chance. With a force born of primal survival, I pushed past her, racing through the unfamiliar house that was a meticulously woven web of deceit. The night air never felt so sweet as when I burst through the front door, my lungs aching with the cold, my heart pounding with the rush of escape. The darkness was no longer an enemy but an ally, cloaking my desperate departure from the horror I had left behind. Action Beat 4, meeting Detective Lara Chen. The police station was stark, the fluorescence harsh against my exhausted eyes, but it was a sanctuary compared to the terror I had escaped. Detective Lara Chen, with her sharp gaze and no-nonsense demeanor, listened intently as I recounted the night's events, her pen never stopping across the paper. Skepticism was a shadow in her expression, a natural response to the unbelievable tale I spun. Yet something in my story, perhaps the raw terror and urgency with which I spoke, saw the skepticism give way to a dawning realization. Lara understood the gravity of what I disclosed, the intricate and horrendous web of deception and stalking Sophie had woven. "We're going to need more than just your word," she admitted, her voice steady, offering a glimmer of hope in the enveloping darkness of my ordeal. It was then I saw it, not just the determination of a detective committed to her duty, but an ally, someone who believed in the nightmare I had lived and was willing to stand beside me in the pursuit of justice. As we pored over the details once more, the weight of what had transpired began to manifest not as fear, but as resolve. Together, with Lara Chen by my side, we would tear down Sophie's facade and expose the horror lurking behind her innocent online persona. Action Beat 5, confrontation at Sophie's lair. With Detective Lara Chen leading, we approached the eerie house that had been the scene of my near demise. The building seemed to loom, a silent testament to the horrors it concealed within its walls. As we breached the threshold, an unsettling quiet enveloped us, the anticipation of confrontation hanging heavily in the air. Sophie was there, her back to us as we entered, seemingly engrossed in her monitors. The sight of her, so calm and collected in the midst of her tangled web of deceit, reignited the fear I had fought so hard to overcome. Yet, with Detective Chen by my side, determination coursed through me, overpowering the remnants of terror. The moment Sophie turned, her eyes widening in surprise, marked the beginning of the end of her reign of terror. The confrontation was swift, her twisted justifications falling on deaf ears as Detective Chen cuffed her, reading her rights with a resolve that felt like the first ray of hope in what had been an endless night of despair. In the aftermath, as Sophie was led away and her victims were liberated, a weight lifted from my shoulders. The shadows that had cloaked my heart began to recede, giving way to a sense of closure and a glimmer of healing. Ending, the night when the digital web of deceit entwined with my life changed me irrevocably. The innocence I once felt towards the online world was shattered, replaced by a vigilant caution and an understanding of the darkness that can lurk behind a screen. Yet, in the depths of that darkness, I found not only the will to survive, but to fight. My story, once a testimony of terror, became a beacon for those who had suffered as I had, and a warning for those who tread the fragile line between the digital and the real. Sophie's downfall marked not just the end of her malevolent pursuits, but the beginning of my journey to reclaim my life from the shadows of my encounter. With each day, the scars left by that night become a bit less painful, a constant reminder of my strength, resilience, and the newfound resolve to protect others from falling into similar traps. As I now stand, looking back at the journey that brought me here, I realize the true horror was not just the near loss of my freedom or even life. It was the betrayal of trust, the manipulation of empathy, and the perversion of the search for connection. In sharing my tale, I hope to cast light into the dark corners of online dating, urging caution and vigilance. For in this digital age, where love and danger lie but a swipe apart, it is our stories of survival and warning that can shield unwary hearts from the echoing footsteps of a predator lurking in wait. The reflection of the setting sun cast elongated shadows across the sparse living room of my new apartment, a physical manifestation of the loneliness that had become my constant companion since moving. Just as I resigned myself to another evening alone, my phone vibrated with a new message. A glimmer of hope sparked within me as I saw who it was from: Sarah, my Tinder match. But the message contained only 2 words that chilled me to the core: help me. It was the last communication I would ever receive from her. Our story began like any modern tale of potential romance, in the digital world of swipes and instant messaging. Sarah's profile was a beacon of light in what felt like an endless sea of incompatibility. Her photos radiated warmth, each smile and pose suggesting a kindred spirit longing for connection. Our conversations quickly deepened, shifting from interests and hobbies to dreams and fears. With each interaction, my isolation felt less suffocating, replaced by an anticipation for every new notification. Excitement and anxiety warred within me as we made plans to meet in person for the first time. We agreed on a quaint cafe known for its cozy atmosphere and artisan coffee, a neutral ground where our digital chemistry could hopefully translate into the physical world. The day arrived, and I found myself at the cafe, nervously adjusting my shirt and running my fingers through my hair for the umpteenth time. But as minutes turned to hours, the warmth of anticipation cooled into the chill of realization. Sarah was not coming. Determined not to let worry cloud my judgment, I convinced myself there must be a plausible explanation. Yet, as I reached for my phone to check for any messages explaining her absence, a sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. Not only had Sarah not messaged, but her Tinder profile was also gone, disappeared without a trace. Attempting to call her only led to the sterile tone of a disconnected line. Desperation gripped me as I returned to my apartment, the shadows now feeling more oppressive than before. My apartment, once a refuge, felt cavernous and empty as I powered up my laptop and began scouring the web for any sign of Sarah. Hours blurred into days as my initial worry morphed into an obsession. The breakthrough came unexpectedly when I stumbled upon a missing persons report. The face staring back at me from the dim glow of the computer screen was undeniably Sarah, yet the name listed was not Sarah. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The woman I had been conversing with, the woman with whom I had shared my deepest thoughts, had been using the identity of someone who had vanished over a year ago. Part 1 ends here. The revelation of Sarah's true identity, or rather, the stolen identity she had presented to me, sent shockwaves through my mind. The loneliness that had driven me to Tinder in the first place now paled in comparison to the horror of realizing I had been drawn into something far more sinister. My search for companionship had unwittingly led me to the dark underbelly of digital dating, a place where identities were as easily fabricated as they were stolen. Determined to uncover the truth, I contacted the police, my fingers trembling as I dialed the number. The call connected me with Detective Marcus, a seasoned officer whose voice bore the weight of too many years spent unraveling the worst of human deceit. I explained my situation, from the innocent beginnings to the chilling discovery, expecting skepticism or dismissal. However, Marcus listened intently, a silent acknowledgement that this was not his first encounter with the darker aspects of online connections. We met at the precinct, a building as weathered and worn as the detective himself. Marcus's sharp gray eyes scrutinized me as I entered, no doubt assessing whether I was another victim or perhaps something more complicit. The initial tension eased as I recounted my story, presenting the evidence I had gathered. Marcus shifted from guarded to genuinely intrigued, sharing that the case of the missing woman, the real Sarah, was one he had been working on for months with few leads. An unlikely partnership formed between us, the desperate loner, and the grizzled detective, each driven by our own motives, but united by a common goal. Marcus revealed the existence of a network operating within the city, one that specialized in identity theft, but whose endgames varied from financial gain to more nefarious purposes. The possibility that the woman I knew as Sarah could be entangled with such a network was both terrifying and galvanizing. Our investigation led us to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, a location Marcus had gleaned from intercepted communications believed to be linked to the network. The plan was straightforward: enter under the guise of a meeting, gather as much information as possible, and retreat before raising suspicion. The reality was anything but. The warehouse loomed before us, a monolith of shadows and broken windows. As we made our way inside, the air grew thick with the anticipation of danger, an unseen pressure that seemed to weigh heavily on my chest. The faint sound of voices led us deeper into the labyrinth of crates and machinery until we found the source. A small group gathered around a makeshift workstation, littered with various forms of identification and digital devices. Our presence did not go unnoticed for long. The meeting was a trap, but not for us. We had walked right into the middle of an internal dispute within the network. Chaos erupted as accusations were hurled, followed by the unmistakable sound of a gun being drawn. Marcus acted instinctively, pulling me down behind a stack of crates as the warehouse filled with the echoes of confrontation. The ensuing moments were a blur of adrenaline and fear. When the opportunity presented itself, Marcus signaled for us to make our escape, using the confusion as cover. We emerged from the warehouse gasping for air, the night air never feeling so sweet nor so bitter. Part 2 ends here. The escape from the warehouse left us both unscathed physically, but the ordeal had etched a deep scar within me. The realization that the quest for connection could so easily become a conduit for deception was a chilling revelation. Detective Marcus, despite the gruff exterior, offered a measure of solace. He assured me that while we had not captured the perpetrators or unraveled the entire web of deceit that night, we had gathered invaluable information that would aid in dismantling the network piece by piece. In the days that followed, the once coveted digital pings of my phone became harbingers of anxiety. Each notification, a reminder of the facade that had lured me into a shadowy world far removed from the genuine connection I sought. Marcus remained in contact, updating me on the progression of the investigation, but the closure I hoped for remained elusive. The network, though disrupted, operated with a tenacity that bordered on the fanatical, their motives rooted in darkness and greed. The decision to withdraw from the digital realm of dating was not an immediate one. It came gradually, as the layers of my naivety were stripped away, leaving a wariness in its place. I realized that while technology had the power to connect, it also had the power to isolate, to deceive, and to endanger. My search for companionship had led me down a path fraught with shadows, each turn revealing a new aspect of human malice that I had previously been blind to. Returning to my apartment, the scene of so many hopeful and then desperate nights, I felt a sense of finality. The digital investigation tools that had once occupied my desk had been packed away, their purpose served and then surpassed. The screens that had illuminated my room, connecting me to Sarah and the dark mystery of her disappearance, were dark. In their place, a resolve to seek connection through more tangible means, to build relationships founded on authenticity rather than digital facades. As the early morning light filtered through my window, casting a soft glow on the remnants of my online persona, I felt a weight lift. The journey had been harrowing, filled with deceit and danger, but it had also been enlightening. The Sarah I had known may have been a fiction, but the lessons learned from our interactions were painfully real. In the aftermath, I was no longer the lonely soul seeking solace online, but a determined individual, resolved to find connection in a world that, despite its darkness, also held the promise of genuine warmth and companionship. This was not the end, but a new beginning, a step into a world where connections were forged face to face, and trust was built on more than just a digital profile. It was a daunting path, but one I was now ready to take, armed with the knowledge that in the search for connection, one must tread carefully, for the shadows of deception lurk close by, ready to ensnare the unwary.